We are Tigris Enterprise. This is our STR Market Study. I'm Casey.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Maggie.
I'm Erin.
And I'm Alan. Please enjoy our presentation.
I'm Maggie, and I do the general makeup of the Chicago market. When we look at the property and room counts, we have multiple chains that have properties with over 1,000 rooms, and those include the Hyatt Regency, the Hilton, the Sheraton, the Marriott, and Dolce Hotels and Resorts. Rooms by tract and submarket are Chicago CBD is the largest by number of rooms because everybody wants to be downtown. So those downtown locations definitely thrive. Properties and rooms by scale. The independent hotels have the most properties, but upper upscale chains have the most rooms because the upscale hotels tend to be a little bit larger. Properties and rooms by class. The economy class has the most properties, but the upper upscale class again has the most rooms because they're larger properties. Properties and rooms by location. Most of our property locations are suburban, but as far as number of rooms go, suburban and urban locations have similar numbers, once again, because urban properties are the largest. Properties and rooms by size. Most hotels have a room range of 75 to 149 rooms. That was the largest makeup there. And the smallest was less than 75 rooms. Hotels of interest in Chicago include the Hyatt Regency, which is the largest hotel featuring 2,019 rooms. The oldest hotel is the Best Western that opened back in 1879. The newest hotel is a Hampton Inn and Suites that opened earlier this year. And the largest destination resort is a Marriott that features a golf course.
I'm Casey. I have current statistics. Chicago, some key statistics. Out of 163 U.S. markets, they are top 5 in hotels, rooms, room supply, room demand, and room revenue. That's huge to be top 5 in those categories for a hotel and lodging industry. That's what you want to strive for. As far as growing and changing, you can see they don't do too much. They're not really ranked too high in that category. So they stay pretty consistent and just get the business that they need to get to stay up at the top of the game. The KPIs for the last 6 years, you can see that there's a consistent increase in all the categories, occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR. In 2010, there was a little drop off in ADR, but it all consistently went back up. This next graph, you can kind of see from 2009 to 2010, there was a recession where we came out of. So the percent changes from those, from 9 to 10 and 10 to 11, you can see that there's quite a drastic change. Like in occupancy, it jumps up 10%, but then kind of just levels off like everything else. So it stays consistent. And these numbers do kind of correlate with each other. So like when the ADR in 2012 goes up, ADR or RevPAR in 2012 is going to go up as well. They all coexist with each other. As far as their percent change for supply and demand goes, supply, like I said earlier, they're not really changing too much. They're not really adding too many more rooms or hotels. The demand from 9 to 10 was a huge jump coming out of the recession, so people are wanting to travel again. That's why that's so high. And once again, these numbers all kind of correlate with each other. Demand and revenue, if the demand's high, you're probably going to be getting more revenue, more income for all your hotels.
Okay, so my name is Taylor Gibson. I did the STR Market Study on trend and data and economic cycles. So this is a graph of the Chicago room supply and demand percent change. As you can see, it shows the relationship between supply and demand from 1998 to 2015. The supply numbers are pretty steady all throughout the years, and then demand dropped a lot, as you can see right here. It had a downturn, and then that was during the recession in 2009. Then it went back up for the recovery in 2011 to 2012. So this is kind of based off of the first graph. It's the actual room supply and demand. You can see between 2002 and 2007, there was a large gap between supply and demand. And as time went on, the gap got smaller, meaning the more rooms were being filled because of the increase in demand. So this is a graph of the occupancy and ADR percent change. So the occupancy and average daily rate percent change, it had a downturn during the recession again in 2009. You can see throughout the graph that they're all pretty equal. All the numbers kind of flow together. Both of the numbers recovered in 2010 and 2011. And then in the past, from 2010 to 2015, all the numbers are like very close compared to the rest of the graph. They were kind of all over the place. And then this is a graph, again going off of the first graph. It's an actual occupancy of ADR. You can see between the actual occupancy is always a little bit higher than the ADR. And then between 2007 and 2015, they're very equal between the rates. So the RevPAR percent change in actual is basically, it's calculated by multiplying the hotel's average daily room rate and its occupancy rate. So this goes off of the first four graphs, basically. You can see like the RevPAR actual, you can tell that like it has the same kind of trended data throughout it. It has that little M, which means basically throughout the year it's having the same exact trend. So right before summer, it hits a peak. Then in the middle of summer, it goes down a little bit. Then at the end of summer, it hits another peak. Then it goes back down at the end of the year. And this graph is the Chicago versus US demand percent change. Basically, this just shows that the demand for the US is really stable throughout from 1998 to 2015, but Chicago's market, it's really up and down. However, the recession in 2009, you can see that both of them went down a little bit, but Chicago really dropped. But then it recovered the following year in 2010, almost twice as much as the US, so that's a good thing. So this is part of the economic cycles of Chicago's market. This is the ADR percent change monthly versus 12 month. Basically, this is the same as the ADR first graph, but the ADR 12 month is just a smoother line. Just it decreases all of the ups and downs from the ADR monthly. This one is very self-explanatory. It just shows the room supply, demand, and occupancy percent change. Basically, the supply and demand numbers are equal as the supply percent change is steady throughout. So you can just see that there. And then this one is also very self-explanatory. This is another graph that just shows basically the combined data of the individual graphs before. This is the occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR percent change. You can tell that all of them are very equal throughout, so it just shows that there's a really steady, it's just really steady throughout these years. And then also in 2009 during the recession, it still had that drop, basically with all of their numbers. And then whenever they recovered in 2010 and 2011, it went back up. So.
For the market breakdown, the first graph I have is the supply and demand percent change. In a graph like this, you kind of want your supply and demand to be pretty equal, but if anything, you want the demand to be higher than your supply. The economy class down here is what impressed me the most. Not having a huge supply, actually decreasing their supply from the year prior, and still having a higher demand or still increasing in demand from what it was. But yeah, anything with a pretty even supply-demand curve is what you would want. Something like upper upscale, you have a lot of supply and a little demand, but still for something like luxury or upper upscale, you're going to be making a lot more money per guest rather than an economy level where you're trying to get everyone you can. Luxury and upscale is more about the consistent brand-aware customers that you have coming back for the reward points and the ones that you have locked in. For the occupancy and ADR percent change, once again, economy is what really impressed me here. You can see that their occupancy and ADR is beating the percent change of all the other classes. Increasing by 8.6%, and the ADR is a huge jump for your average daily rate. It's going to, in the long run, equal more revenue, more profit for your business. What you want is a better ADR and better occupancy. If you're filling up and for more money, you can't lose. For their actual occupancy and ADR, the numbers are obviously going to be higher in luxury where you have more hotels and more rooms and consistently just kind of goes down, but still here economy is competing with the two levels above it. Although they have less rooms and less places to stay, they're still filling up and they're still competing with other levels, other markets for the hotels. The RevPAR percent change is kind of the same as this last graph. It all kind of correlates. Your actual RevPAR is going to be higher in the luxury. That's where you have most of your options, most of your hotels. But again, the economy class, RevPAR percent change is shooting up. Their actual RevPAR is on par with everything else. So this is the class that I'm looking out for, the one that's on the rise. One reason I think it is on the rise is because there's a lot of younger travelers starting to get into the industry and going around trying to find the cheapest places to stay, but still trying to get out there and travel. So they're not going to be the ones in the luxury or the upscale hotels. They're going to be down here in the cheaper hotels that they can afford. Not as brand loyal yet as some of the other customers out there. By track, obviously Chicago CBD, their downtown area is going to be the highest. Everyone wants to be downtown, so supply and demand is pretty equal, and that's a great curve right there. One that I really like right here is this North Chicago. Obviously they need to get some more hotels in that area, but there's a lot of demand for hotels up there. Could be because there's a lot of family, a lot of people going back to visit. You want to stay on the north side of the city, easy commute back to the town, or back to the city, but not as expensive as downtown. For a lot of reasons, but the suburbs of Chicago are kind of on the rise. Percent changes for these tracks. You can see right here, it's a huge percent change for the south side of Chicago in occupancy and ADR. That just means they're filling up better than they were the year before, which means they can charge more when the demand's higher. All good when you can do that. And this is kind of the same, just actual numbers. You can see downtown can be the most expensive and they can be the most occupied, but it's going to get a little cheaper as you get outside of the city. Occupancy in the north side is higher than the counties or close to the airport where people have to stay anyway. So I'd just say look out for the north side of Chicago and south side of Chicago, the suburbs are on the rise. Again, Chicago's CBD is going to be their money makers. That's their central business district or their downtown area. These are just percent changes in the actual RevPAR. So you can see the rooms that they're not filling how they're filling them. That makes sense. They're revenue per available room, so it's if it's available, they're doing good about getting it filled up.
Alright, so my name is Swanson. I did the comparable data section. First, I'm going to talk about, this is Chicago versus the top 25 U.S. markets. And as you can see, Chicago is among the top 5. It's actually in 3rd place on this graph right here. And then this is the Chicago versus Illinois markets. You can see that the Chicago area and St. Louis, Missouri, Illinois area, the occupancy is about the same percent, but for ADR, Chicago exceeds the St. Louis area by far. And this is just the Chicago area compared to other Chicago areas, and it just compares the number of rooms in each area. And the downtown Chicago area more than triples each other area in Illinois. And then this is the Chicago versus comparable markets, their supply and demand percent change. For this, the supply percent is among some of the top of other markets, but for demand, it's kind of on the lower side. And then for Chicago versus comparable markets, occupancy and ADR percent change, their occupancy is not very good compared to some of the other markets, but for ADR, it's pretty low as well. You can see that places like Atlanta or Los Angeles have a way higher ADR than Chicago. And then for actual occupancy and ADR, Chicago's ADR is pretty high up there with New York and Washington, but for the occupancy, we're still kind of on the lower side. And then this is Chicago's RevPAR percent change versus actuals, and for the actual RevPAR, we're at 99, which is not too high, but compared to some other ones, it's decent. And then for the actual percent change, it's pretty not the lowest, but it's alright compared to some other markets. And then I also did the types of businesses. So you can see a higher occupancy on the week ends. In the last few years, you show a little growth on the weekdays. And then weekday had higher ADR than weekends. There's consistent growth in ADR over the years though. For this one, we can see that Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays have the highest actual occupancy for just days of the week. And then we see Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays have the highest actual overall ADR for the days of the week. Each day, ADR has increased by at least 10 points from 2014, which is in blue, to 2016, which is in green. And for the Chicago market historic occupancy, we see peaks in June, July, and October. And then the highest occupancy was in 2015 from 2010 to 2016. 2015 was at the highest occupancy. And then for historic ADR from 2010 to 2016, we see that the peak months are in June and October. And then in May 2014, we can see there's a peak in September, which I'm not too sure why that happened that year. This is a Chicago group and transient mix. Transient's higher every year for the most part, but from 2005 to 2008, they're both kind of similar and at the same percent change. For Chicago Group Transient actual ADR, we can see it's higher in the years from 2005, Transient is higher in the years 2005 to 2007, but in 2009 and 2010, group and actual ADR is noticeably higher, which is like right about here. And then we have group and transient demand percent change. Demand growth takes a few big dips, and that's in the purple. It's pretty consistent except in 2009 where the transient does dip down a little lower than it usually does. And then the ADR percent is, there's a lot of big dips, or it dips down very low in 2009, 2010, and that's during the recession. And then I also have daily data. This just shows the days of the month that people travel on more frequently. And this was occupancy above 90% only for each day of the month. And then this is how frequently the occupancy was above 90% on each day of the month. So you can see that on these are the top 5 days people travel on the most. And there's a tie for 5th place with 7. And then these are just a couple events that could impact Chicago's occupancy. Things like the Chicago Marathon or music festivals.
Next we'll be presenting on the pipeline and development data. On this graph we have the actual room supply and supply percent change for Chicago. There are a couple sharp increases and decreases for the actual supply line. It had a really sharp decrease in 2008 and 2009 for the recession, which really hit the nation pretty hard. And then along with that, the supply percentage change followed with another sharp decrease itself in 2011. For the historic supply growth by scale, there was the most growth in the economy upper upscale, and independent segments. Everything was pretty uniform. Sorry, they look so similar to me. Okay, sorry. For the historic supply growth by scale in the last 5 years, the most growth was in upper upscale, upper mid-scale, and the economy scale hotels. And for the recent opening hotels in Chicago, there were a sharp increase in the upper upscale and upper mid-scale and I'm going to be covering the host and profitability data. On this graph we have the information for the room revenue, total revenue, expense, GOP, and the non-room revenue. And the largest increase comes with the total revenue, which is the line in yellow. And then the room revenue is the second largest increase, while the other 3 lines are still increasing, but a much steadier and slower pace. Now we're going to present our forecast data. This is from our data from June of 2016, and it goes until 2017. For the forecast data for this year, 2016, there are pretty large gains, and then when you look at the column on the right, while there's still positive numbers, they're definitely not as large, so it's decreasing, but the hotels are still going to be doing well, just not as good as the previous year due to the substantial decreases.
And then this is our summary. These are just some important notes that I put in. Basically, Chicago is a really unique travel destination because the market is highly populated with upper upscale chain hoteliers compared to like mid-scale or economy or even independents. So in fact, about 10 new upper upscale hotels were built within the past year, which is great for their market. It's going to just keep increasing their revenues. It was also important to note that the average occupancy rate is generally always above 90% on any given day of the week, which means basically business travel is high throughout the week and pleasure and vacation travel is very high on weekends. It's great for their market. Industry professionals should make sure to keep track of events along with the time of year when deciding average room rates for the upcoming months to ensure higher revenue. So basically, that's what the industry should look after, like for forthcoming weeks and months.
And for our Chicago market takeaways, we have, oh my gosh. For the Chicago market and takeaways, the urban and suburban hotel locations are doing really well. They make up over 80% of the census rooms. Navy Pier is an especially big destination site for travelers, particularly on the 4th of July holidays. There's also above average foot traffic due to all the shopping and facilities, which also include the sports facilities, museum, and the local aquarium throughout the city, all within close walking distance.
So looking ahead in the Chicago market, these are just some questions that could come up for hoteliers to make sure that they keep their revenue up. Will Lollapalooza create the same amount of revenue as it has in the past? Will Chicago continue to build upper upscale hotels? They might want to make smaller ones to move towards like the maybe lower end market. Will the daily average occupancy rate stay above 90% each day? And then what are some strategies to fill that last 10% gap? That's going to be a big thing to maximize their